Hey everyone, this is day 4, week 5. So on Monday we painted Danny's portrait, 3/4 looking away from us. On Tuesday for Martes Español we painted my niece Emma, on her kitchen. I thought that was a really nice painting. I was really happy with that painting. Then yesterday we went back to our 4-color palette, our Zorn palette, and I had a blast. Just really shifting my hues just a little bit, so that pillow was a little bit yellower than the sheet that was a little bit cooler and bluer, and then suddenly this little bit of head just kind of peeked and popped out of this big massive hair, because thank God he's got way better hair than me. So what was very tough, and you saw it again, is that those moments that require just a very high degree of drawing precision are tough. They're very tough. I don't care how good you are. I mean, some people are just fantastic, at drawing. But I struggle all the time. I think it's tough. I'm not going to be one of the people here in YouTube that feels like they're better than everyone else. It's tough for me. It's very tough for me. It's humbling for me. I have no issues in accepting that it is tough for me. I wouldn't even trust anyone that would say like, oh no, that's cake, that's super easy for me. No. It's always hard. It's always difficult. But we kept at it. I was really adamant about just trying to get that gesture of the head right. And I was happy. I think, it came out really nice. And what was happening, if I could just make a summary of yesterday, I think that my features, I tend to scrunch them up a little bit, just make them a little bit smaller when I'm trying to look attentively at them. And I always have to kind of like step back, give myself some distance, even if I'm working on a small painting, just give myself some distance and realize that it has to relate a little bit better. Those, tiny like little indications of features have to relate better to the big shape of the head that I had already blocked in, which was his big hair. So always a reminder that small things can look great, but if they don't relate to the bigger parts of the painting, they're always going to seem off. And that's what was happening to me. So again, basics. Just really think about the foundation of drawing and painting and go back to those simple rules. And for today, my daughter does gymnastics. So I went downstairs, she had like extracurricular class. And then her bus dropped her off, and we were coming up the elevator, and she was just looking at herself in the mirror because she's somewhat vain, just like crazy vain. And I loved it. I loved this encounter that she had with the mirror, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I can actually do a painting where I'm going to speak about the back of her head, but there's also reflection, which in theory, should be the one that identifies her. Should be the one that gives her like specificity. But I thought, well, what if we try to make it vague because it is a back of a head, and vague and make the reflection vague also. And that should be a cool, nice exercise, and it's perfect for this week. So that's what I thought, and I think we can have a really good time painting this particular painting. So let's get to it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, let's do this again. A little bit of technical info again. This is a watercolor paper, and I had a really good experience with that painting of Samu yesterday, so I decided to use it again. Like I said, it tends to become a little bit heavy. It kind of gets drenched in the primer, in the acrylic primer. So just be wary of that and just do your priming. If you can't do it 2 days prior, at least 24 hours prior, to just let the paper go back to its original state. But I really liked it. It has this tiniest bit of drag to it because of all the fiber that it has, and I loved it. Again, it has a value 7, grayscale acrylic Holbein on top, and it actually helps me a ton just to not to work on just pure white. The reason it does help me, and I'm not a super purist about this, but I usually work on a palette that is not white. So my palette is like a value 5 gray tinted glass palette. So the idea is that your ground is always, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but at least that the value is close to what you have in your palette. So if you have a white palette, it's fine if you work on a white canvas or a white linen or a white board. But if you're working on a tinted palette, it's best if your ground is actually the same value. And the reason is very simple. It's just the mixes that you do in your palette can translate one-to-one on your painting. That's pretty much it. And again, I'm using my lining brush, my rigger brush. I usually tend to go for that one when I want my drawing to be somewhat more precise. But there is a point in my drawing where I realize I should be using like a bigger brush. I should be using something bigger to, let's say, be able to visualize initially and more wholly the masses of light and dark. And that's why I try to move fairly quickly with my lining brush. I don't use it as if it was a pencil or a pen or something that has a sharp point that is almost like conducive to doing little detail in the drawing, because it's never going to be ideal or helpful in an alla prima painting to do a drawing that is, its aim is not to contain you, but in many ways it is going to condition you. And if your drawing is slightly, even slightly off, the fact that you see it so harshly put in your surface, you are going to be, again, conditioned to just follow it, even if it's wrong. So it does kind of carve out this road that would take a lot of like courage and strength to just veer off of it to make changes. So I try to go very, very quickly for a flat, in this case, like a flat synthetic, just to put those dark masses in very, very quickly. And yes, be helped by the rigger brush, but also realize that, there is also a manner in which you can approach drawing that doesn't have to always land on doing line drawing. Doing values is also a perfectly fine way to do drawing. Just shapes of values is a fantastic way to approach drawing. I remember my first semester of Stephen Assell's class, and I tell this every time I do a workshop. I had no idea how to paint, absolutely no clue how to paint, because I have to be honest, foundation year at SVA, it was a terrible year for me, and especially in painting. They just didn't tell us anything about painting. I mean, the teacher was a super nice guy, and thank God my friend Niels Karsten, which is a fantastic artist, he is teaching foundation painting now, and he, I'm sure, is a great teacher. Plus, he's a fantastic printmaker, and I know he can paint the hell out of the painting. So I'm very happy that he has that job. But when we were studying, it wasn't that great. I have to be honest. So it was almost like, I don't want to say it sounds harsh, but it was almost like a wasted year. And when Steve saw me paint, he was like, well, why don't you stop painting? And it took him one painting to just say this to me, after I had bought almost $1,000 worth of materials just to be in the class. He said, well, why don't you stop painting and just bring tomorrow some, 18 by 24 pad of whatever paper, just newsprint or whatever, cheap paper, it didn't matter. And he said, we're just going to do a Vine charcoal drawing. And you just cover the page with Vine charcoal, and you just lift up your lights with a kneaded eraser. And I was like, what? I just spent all this money on painting materials, and he's telling me to just draw. And it was very helpful. It was a way of him just saying, we're just going to look at the very basic things about painting. You're just going to look at masses of light and shadow and try to find a transition between them. And I trusted him. That's all I did for my first semester. He wanted me to draw, to concentrate on drawing, on a manner of drawing that was focused for painting. And I trusted him, and that was it. So again, I don't see drawing as this doesn't have a very singular definition. Drawing is a set of tools that you have at your disposal, and the more tools you have, then the better chances you can actually use them to get yourself out of trouble. That's what drawing is supposed to be. Now, there's obviously that's drawing as a tool, but there's also drawing as technique, and there's incredible draftsmen throughout history, which seek drawing as a final image. But when you're doing a painting, drawing is just a step so that you can move forward. So always think about that when you're doing your drawing. If you are totally fine with having like a super, super tight drawing underneath, then good. Good for you. That's awesome. And paint that way. I just feel we need to be versatile enough so that if we don't have that drawing, we feel comfortable. Like we feel totally fine. And that's what I try to do with these daily sort of exercises. Now, this painting is very cool in many, many ways for me. And as I was saying in the intro, I just felt like it was such a nice moment. I mean, a moment spurred by Fer's vanity, of course, but it's something that could be, a wonderful painting, I thought. And when I tried to almost transcribe it into what this week's theme is about, I thought, well, what if the answer to this back of the head is not this reflection? Because in a reflection, we tend to want to see almost like the outcome. It's like the equation is this back, this person that is giving their back to you. But again, the outcome of that equation, the answer to that, like the pot of gold, is actually what you see in that reflection, and you uncover it. And you're like, oh, that's what that person looks like. It's almost like that tiny little, very obtuse exclamation point that Las Meninas has, where he is actually painting, the king and queen. But the actual king and queen occupy the tiniest bit of space in that painting, in the reflection, in a very muted reflection in a mirror that's, tons of feet back into space. This is a far more direct painting, I feel. This is more in the tradition, let's say, of a Narcissus painting. And the Caravaggio Narcissus is like the most famous painting, which always reminded me, there's a very beautiful, and you have to give Nurjan props when he does beautiful painting, because he is very capable of doing very, very beautiful paintings. But he has the Sole Morte painting, which is basically a very Narcissus painting, and I think it's a really, really fantastic painting also. But this is simpler. This is a more direct engagement, not of her with the viewer. She's not uncovering anything. It's like it's her with herself. She is actually almost like demanding attention from herself. What was cool about this, and I was very, very happy when I was blocking this reflected head in, was that I was keeping it, very loose. And I was like, I want that. I want the face that is in the other side to be loose. I don't want it to be the head that almost grounds the back of the head that's in the first plane into this reality. I don't want that one to be the important one. I don't want to almost traverse this big back of the head with this beautiful like trapezius and her shoulders. I don't want to go through that very quickly just to see what Fer looks like. I wanted to almost have the painting bounce back at you, like you almost were yearning to see what she looks like, and you suddenly encountered a face that was blocked in and with no detail. So what you end up doing as a viewer, that was my hope, is that you bounce back. You go back, you revert to the head that's in the first plane, and and then you go back and forth in the image. That was my plan, and I thought, well, that's going to be cool, because I don't want there to be like a payoff. I don't want there to be like for there to be a very traditional sort of journey, sort of path that you go through this painting, and you find the end point. You finally get to the end zone, and you say, okay, I was supposed to travel through her uniform, and go through this beautiful back and up her neck, and then this, kind of big shape of her hair, and go to the reflection, and then finally there's Fed. And what you try to do is do a kick-ass portrait of Fed, and it's like, yes, beautiful. It's like angels singing, everything works, perfect. No, this was more, and coincidentally, that's what that Manet bar painting actually does, which many people say, well, it's actually impossible from that angle to get the that reflection. But it's a brilliant painting. It's almost like even if he took like artistic liberties, because who cares? It's painting. You can lie all you want when you do a painting. I mean, it's an interpretation of nature. You don't have to be bound to the rules of the universe, that the rules of nature that govern nature. There's a lot of people out there that are total buzzkills that say, well, that's not a reflection. That's impossible. You can't look at somebody, to have a full frontal view of somebody and then suddenly their reflection is actually at an angle. But it's a brilliant painting, and it's a super nice painting, which actually you as a viewer become, when you see the reflection, the guy that's like asking for a drink, right in front of the bar. And I thought that was amazing. That's an incredible painting. Manet is just an amazing, fantastic painter. But I didn't want that. I didn't want there to be like a distorted version and then finally like a more naturalistic version. It's almost like through the looking glass thing. I didn't want there to be like two realities. I wanted to be like a blocking looking at a blocking. I thought that was going to be super, super cool. But the thing is, and here's the tough part, because I was looking at Fed, I was just caught up in just wanting to paint Fed. And I thought, oh, she's, I see my daughter with father's eyes, so I think she's absolutely beautiful. She's probably like the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And I want to paint her, and I got caught up, and I saw her rosy cheeks, and I was like, oh, I got to paint those rosy cheeks. And I was like, no, that's too rosy, but I got to do the little drop shadow in the nose. And I have to hint that there's a hint of her eyes there, and maybe her tiny little lips in the bottom. And at some point I was like, okay, I just killed my painting. What I thought was so cool about this painting, I lost it. And I grabbed my palette knife and I went to town. I was like, why don't I pay attention to myself? Like, why did I forget, what sort of painting I wanted to paint initially? So I grabbed my palette knife, which is very hard, when there's something as precious as a painting of, your daughter in front of you, to just scrape it off. It takes a lot. But I scraped it off, and then I brought it back to like a blocking stage. And I finally had this super, super expressive, very abstract, kind of eerie. It's kind of, if I saw a reflection of Fed and it looked that way, I would run. I would make a run for it. I would book it. I would just hide in the hills. I don't know. But it just made perfect sense for what I was trying to do with the painting. And I was happy. And I scolded myself. I was like, dude, come on. Like, you knew better. You knew that you didn't have to go for that face. Why did you do it? Like, why can't you just say, yeah, you're painting your daughter, but come on, this is a painting. You have, hundreds of other paintings where you can try to paint Fed as beautiful as you can make her. But this wasn't the painting to do so. And it was cool. It was really kind of nice accepting that I have an opportunity to speak about something else, that is probably more true to to the way Fed looks at herself, and I was ruining it because I wanted to make it about how I look at her, and I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't let myself just kill this painting because I thought it was a simple but very, very cool kind of effective painting. That was, again, as is the case with many of my paintings, it was born from a super simple act of just going with my daughter, up the elevator and just looking at herself. And I was like, oh, could you stay still? I'm going to, take a photograph. And that was it. I was just, again, my eyes are always wide open for opportunities, not opportunities to paint, but just opportunities to see something super beautiful about my daughter and to learn something about her. And then hopefully when I paint when I do this painting, I not only learn about her, but also giving myself an opportunity to learn about myself. So I actually super like this painting. I really like the composition because of the photograph. Some of you people like demonize photography, but because of the photograph, and this is just a dumb cell phone, and because of the lens distortion, she is a lot bigger, in front than she is in the back, which wouldn't happen if you were doing a more naturalistic painting. But I really liked that kind of play of dimensions, and I don't mind at all. So a lot of people say, well, I took this with a cell phone and I have to correct the distortion in perspective. Oh, I don't care about those. The way a cell phone sees reality, interprets reality, a cell phone's camera, I think it's absolutely beautiful. So I don't mind working from it. So that was today's painting. I had a blast doing it, and we have one more day to go. So let's see what tomorrow brings us. Thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.